There's now a petition demanding that the DA drop all charges against Karmelo. And it needs more signatures right now. Right now it's sitting under 400 signatures. And yes, the case went viral a couple months ago after it first happened, but now it's starting to lose traction.
You don't expect the courtroom to go still like this. Not over this. Not over something so specific, so deliberate. But when Karmelo Anthony's father takes the stand, there's a shift in the air. A quiet that creeps in and refuses to leave. At first, his voice is low, almost hard to hear. The judge leans in, the prosecution's eyes narrow, and the jury, they stop writing, because what he says changes everything.
I gave him the knife.
The father admits under oath.
I didn't know what he was going to do with it.
The statement doesn't come in a heated moment. There's no outburst. It's calm, measured. And that's what makes it worse. It's not just an implication anymore. It's confirmation. He knew his son had that weapon long before the confrontation ever began. Suddenly, every argument about self-defense sounds different. Suddenly, every protest sign outside loses some of its weight. And for the supporters watching, especially those tied to BLM, this moment hurts. You can feel it in the silence. Some shake their heads, some look down. A few whisper among themselves, disbelief written all over their faces. This wasn't what they rallied behind. This wasn't what they were told. But now the testimony is public, and there's no going back. And now people are asking, did Karmelo act alone? Or was this always bigger than just one decision? You hear murmurs ripple across social media before the courtroom even breaks for lunch. Screenshots of the transcript are everywhere. Bolded, circled, dissected. I gave him the knife. BLM supporters who once stood shoulder to shoulder in rallies now find themselves split. Some argue it was a moment of protection, a father passing along something for self-defense in a dangerous world. Others aren't so sure. He brought a knife before anything happened, one comment reads. That's not defense, that's intent. In a space once unified around perceived injustice, doubt is setting in, fast. Reporters crowd outside the courthouse, trying to corner the father for clarification. Why did you give him the knife? One shouts. He doesn't respond. He keeps walking, shoulders slumped, eyes on the ground. Inside, the prosecution is already adjusting their narrative. They push the timeline harder, emphasizing how Karmelo's possession of the weapon predates any physical threat. It's no longer just about a tragic moment. It's about everything that led up to it.
You can see it on the jury's faces. Some lean forward now, more alert. Others glance sideways at the defense table, as if reevaluating everything they've been told. And now people are wondering, if the father admits to supplying the weapon, what role, if any, does he play in the charges? Could this spiral into new indictments? Or is the court about to witness a second trial without even switching defendants? Because this testimony didn't just shift the trial, it may have just shifted the entire target. You watch as the courtroom reopens after recess, but the energy has shifted. Gone is the quiet tension of earlier sessions. Now the air is heavy with speculation. People whisper behind raised folders and half-covered mouths, eyes bouncing between the defense table and the witness stand. Karmelo's father is called back in for further questioning. This time he's visibly shaken. His tie is loosened, hands clenched tight in his lap. The defense tries to clarify, "You gave your son the knife? Why?" His answer is quiet but clear.
He told me he was scared. He thought someone was after him. I didn't think he'd use it like that.
Gasps spread through the rows behind you. Even the judge pauses for a beat longer than usual, fingers steepled under their chin. It's not just about whether the stabbing was justified anymore. Now it's about whether anyone else should have stopped it. The prosecution doesn't waste a second. They pull up a time-stamped screenshot. A text from Karmelo sent hours before the incident. It reads, "I'm gonna make sure he never tries me again." They zoom in on the screen as the father buries his face in his hands. Social media lights up again. He News starts trending. Some call it a failure of parenting. Others call it misjudged protection. But either way, this new revelation has shifted public pressure onto the family, not just Karmelo himself. And now people are asking, should Karmelo's father be held legally accountable for what happened next? Or is this just the fallout of a father trying to protect his son and losing control of the consequences? Because with that one admission, he may have unknowingly stepped onto the stand as a defendant himself. You glance across the courtroom gallery, and it's not just the families who look stunned anymore, it's the jurors. Faces once unreadable are now rigid. One has their arms crossed tightly, another glances down at their notes like they're suddenly unsure of what they thought they knew. The energy is tense. No one moves. No one even shifts in their seat. The prosecution seizes the moment. They ask the father if he knew Karmelo was headed to the Frisco track meet that day. He hesitates, then he nods. The prosecutor presses harder. "And you gave him the knife, knowing he was going to a public school event?"
He said it was for protection. I didn't think.
But the courtroom doesn't hear the rest. The murmurs are already building. Even Karmelo's legal team stiffens at the response. Outside, reporters rush to get the headline out. Karmelo's father confirms, "I gave him the knife." Within hours, the confession has splintered into a national talking point. News anchors question parental accountability. Social feeds pit protection versus negligence. Protesters shift their chants, no longer just about justice for Karmelo, but now about the roots of violence. Inside the courtroom, a sudden commotion causes the judge to call for silence. A woman in the back row, believed to be related to the Metcalfs, stands up and says aloud, "And this is who you've all been defending?" The judge warns her. She sits down, but her words linger. And now, with new questions forming in every corner of the room and the internet, the spotlight turns again. Was the stabbing truly a spontaneous act of fear, or the final step in a plan that began long before that day? Because now, it's not just what Karmelo did that's on trial, it's who helped him prepare for it. You check your phone, expecting another update on court schedules, but instead, you see it. A clip from the courtroom testimony is circulating. It's already being dissected frame by frame on Twitter, TikTok, and cable news. The moment Karmelo's father admits to handing over the knife isn't just shocking, it's now viral. But it's what happens after that confession that sends shockwaves through the public. Camera footage inside the courtroom shows Karmelo sitting silently beside his attorney, jaw clenched. He doesn't react, not visibly, but his father, seated in the witness box, keeps darting glances toward him. At one point, he lowers his head and mutters,
"I was just trying to keep him safe."
A courtroom mic barely catches the words. That sentence ignites a public firestorm. On one side, supporters argue this proves the father feared for his son's safety, that he was reacting to an environment where young black boys are often unprotected. The BLM community, once unified in their support, now appears divided. Some say the act was a failure of judgment, but not malice. Others call it negligence at the highest level. Then come the headlines: protection or premeditation. Did Karmelo's father enable the crime? Parental fear or facilitation? Even prominent activists weigh in. One tweet reads, "You can love your child and still lead them down a dangerous path. We have to talk about that." And now people are wondering, if the weapon wasn't stolen, if it wasn't improvised, what does that do to Karmelo's entire self-defense claim? Does this new information paint a different picture of what really happened that day? Because in the court of law, timing and intent matter. And this admission just cracked the foundation of Karmelo's defense wide open. The next day in court, everyone walks in quieter than usual. The benches creak as people settle, and even the guards seem more alert. It's not just another day of testimony, it's the fallout. The ripple effect of a father's admission has shifted the tone of the entire case. The prosecution wastes no time. They replay the father's confession, this time pausing on his exact phrasing, timing, and delivery. They zoom in on the courtroom video, emphasizing the lack of hesitation in his voice. It wasn't accidental, it wasn't uncertain, it was clear.
"I gave it to him before you left."
And that single line now carries the weight of intent. The prosecutor turns to the jury and asks, if the father believed his son was in danger, why arm him instead of protecting him himself? She lets it linger. Then the defense stands. Karmelo's attorney reminds the jury that the teenager had been harassed before, that there were incidents, that the father didn't hand over a weapon to commit a crime, but to deter one. It was a father's fear, not a father's plan, she says. Still, the courtroom shifts. Jurors take longer notes. One wipes his glasses with shaking hands. A woman in the back rows nods solemnly. Outside, news vans swarm the courthouse steps. Protesters from both sides gather, some holding signs defending the father's actions, others demanding accountability for enabling violence. One woman shouts, "This isn't justice, it's damage control." And the judge, he calls for an early recess. Because now, the legal lines have blurred. Was this truly self-defense or a preloaded confrontation? And if the father's act was rooted in fear, what does that say about the world they're living in? Is fear a reason or a weapon? You can feel it. This trial has shifted into uncharted territory. The headlines no longer focus on what happened during the stabbing, but everything that came before it. Every parent watching now asks the same question. What would you do if your child said they felt threatened? And would your decision still feel justified if tragedy followed? Inside the courtroom, Karmelo sits motionless as his father's statement echoes through legal debate, public outrage, and emotional testimony. The defense doubles down, reminding everyone that the father didn't tell Karmelo to use the knife. He handed it over out of fear, not fury. But that distinction, it's not landing as clearly as before. Observers say the jury is now visibly divided. Some nod quietly at the defense's logic. Others appear shaken by the precedent it might set. Because if handing your child a weapon in fear is accepted as common sense, where does the line of responsibility stop? Meanwhile, social media is caught in a storm of interpretation. Hashtags demand clarity. Some call for the father's arrest. Others say he was simply trying to keep his son safe in a hostile environment. But there's no agreement, only growing noise. Then comes a rumor that spreads fast. Prosecutors are considering bringing charges against the father himself. Nothing official, just quiet murmurs picked up by reporters and floated on late-night news streams. And now people are wondering, was this confession a strategic mistake or the beginning of another trial altogether? Because this case, what started as a singular moment of violence, is no longer about just one decision or one person or one knife. It's about every choice leading up to that moment, and the cost of silence when it mattered most.